What's good, everybody? It's your boy, and we're back with another video. Today, we are talking about the game tomorrow between Vanderbilt, 20-0, ranked number 5 at this current moment, 6-0 in the SEC, against South Carolina, who is currently ranked number 2, coming off a loss to Oklahoma in Oklahoma. 19-2 on the season, 5-1 in the SEC. Huge game going down in Columbia. Before we get into it, make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe. But let's get into it. This game was already a monumental game for standings and what teams are, feeling about themselves and things like that. But, man, that South Carolina loss on, what was that, Thursday? I don't want to say it said a lot, but it definitely was not a great look. I will say some of the things that I talked about in the previous video about South Carolina, like the things that they would need to do to be able to beat a UConn, some of those things showed themselves in the game against Oklahoma. And I will say the half court has always been a struggle. I wouldn't say like a clear struggle because they've had players like Aaliyah Boston, Asia Wilson, Camila Cardoso. Like, they've had players that have been able to just be that outlet. They don't really have that this year, even though they have a very talented offense. When you think about the fact that you have Tanaya Latson, who was the leading scorer in the league or in the country last year. You have Joyce Edwards, who's a 20-point-per-game scorer. You have Tessa Johnson, who shoots over 40% from three. You have Raven Johnson, who is, when she's aggressive and confident, one of the better point guard scorers when she wants to be. And I do think there's going to come a time where they have to figure out what exactly they want to do offensively. Do you want to be more perimeter-based, or do you want to continue to try to play through the post and figure out things as they go along? And I think this is a team, and I thought going into this season, I thought this team would be more of a perimeter-based team because you brought in a Tanaya Latson, who's the leading scorer in the country, and you have a Tessa Johnson that shoots 45, 46, 47% from three. You can use those guards to get easier things for Joyce Edwards. Now, granted, Joyce Edwards shoots about almost 60% from the field, so it's not like she's shooting, bad shots or anything like that. I do think when the game gets down to one possession games and it gets kind of mucked up, like we saw it in the Texas game where it just didn't look phenomenal in terms of what their offense was, but their defense is always elite. Now, like I said before about them, if they had played UConn, they would have to be able to keep up with UConn, and Oklahoma is a team that is a high-scoring team. So there were times throughout the game where they couldn't score, but there was a lot of times where they were still getting the shots they wanted. They were getting offensive rebounds. South Carolina was missing a lot of layups. Alot missed more layups than we're accustomed to seeing her miss. Joyce Edwards missed some post hook shots that she normally makes. Tessa Johnson missed some open threes that she normally makes. So I do think there's a little bit of balance in between, like, okay, this needs to be better, but also they'll make some of the shots that they miss more times than they'll miss them. But we did see in the first Texas game, they ended up losing that game, I think, because of the layups that they missed in that game. So maybe it's a sign, maybe it's a thing that is reoccurring for this season, for this team specifically. I do like what I saw from Alicia. I think she played a phenomenal game in the second and third quarter. I think as time goes on, she's going to become more and more of a threat and more of a help for them. But I am curious to see, how big of a role she's going to be able to have as the season continues. Let's talk about Vanderbilt. 20-0. They beat LSU. They beat Michigan earlier this week, which was a great game, a great win as well. I think that was in New Jersey, so neither team had the, home court advantage. So being able to win a neutral site game, top 10 team, probably a top 7 or 8 team if you really look at it. If you look at it in full. So being able to win a game like that, being able to beat a team like LSU, I think they beat Kentucky as well. I could be wrong, but they've won some really good games this season, and I think I don't want to say this is the game that would solidify them, because I do think the Michigan game and the LSU game still puts them heavily in the top 10, even if they are to lose this game. Granted, it's on the road as well, and I'm looking at the ESPN analytics. ESPN has an 89% chance that South Carolina wins this game. I think that's entirely too high. This Vanderbilt team is really, really good. Granted, I don't want to give too much credit to ESPN because it's not like, everybody that's around them is just super, super, engulfed in what Vanderbilt has looked like, or what their teams are capable of, or what their team is capable of this year. But I will say, this is a game for Mikayla Blakes that, I think Aaliyah Chavez's game on Thursday solidified her at this point as the National Freshman of the Year. If Mikayla Blakes can have a similar game like that, not even and I think Mikayla Blakes could have a better game than Aaliyah Chavez had because she's more efficient. She's, Vanderbilt has a better way of getting Mikayla Blakes open shots and things like that. I think this could be a game that could solidify her firmly in the top 3 of that National Player of the Year conversation. And then as the season continues to go, she's going to have more and more big games that allows her to, cement herself in that position. And this also is a chance for them to, give South Carolina a second SEC loss. Then they still have to see Tennessee. If you, really, you give South Carolina the second loss, you control a lot of what could happen in terms of regular season and postseason conference tournament. So this is a huge game for Vanderbilt for multiple reasons. I think Aubrey Galvin, I think she's going to be super important to what they're able to do. Obviously, you have players like Raven Johnson and Tessa Johnson who are really good at, slowing down perimeter players and making things more difficult. But I think the attention to detail is what's important for Vanderbilt. I think they can look at some of the things that Oklahoma was able to do in terms of offensive rebounding and just being able to push the pace, make South Carolina play their style of basketball. If they're able to do that, I think they have a really good chance of winning this game. When I look at Vanderbilt, obviously you have Mikayla Blakes, and after that it's okay, are we going to consistently get the things that we get from the other players outside of Mikayla Blakes in these big moments and in these big games? And we have so far. So it's not to say that I don't think they will, because they have. Justine Passat, I think, is still is a great shooter. If she's able to do that in this game, that opens the door. Again, same thing with Oklahoma. Oklahoma was able to shoot the ball at a good pace or at a good rate for most of the game. Obviously, the offensive rebounds help too. But I think players like Justine Passat, Aubrey Galvin, Sasha Washington, I think them being able to do what they do specifically really well in terms of rebounding the ball, shooting the 3, getting paint touches and things like that for Aubrey, I think this makes this game a lot more difficult for South Carolina. And a lot of times, I always say, when you're playing top teams, now granted, they're both top teams, but when you're playing top teams, you want to keep that game close for as long as possible, because then those mistakes start to mount up, and you can take advantage of mistakes. Both teams, for both sides. South Carolina can take advantage of Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt can take advantage of South Carolina. If South Carolina can figure out the half-court offense, continue to do what they do defensively, they win this game. If Vanderbilt is able to outplay them, offensive rebound, shoot the 3 ball well, better than South Carolina, this game could be theirs. I think Mikayla Blakes obviously has to shoot shoot efficiently. You need Aubrey Galvin to make good decisions. You can't have her turn the ball over a lot. She averages 6 assists and 2.5 turnovers. Now, granted, she's a freshman, so I'm not really looking at the turnovers per game and she's got to do this. She's a freshman. I'm okay. We're good with what she's doing right now. You do want her to shoot better from the floor. She's shooting 39. We'll round up. She's shooting 40% from the floor. You do want that to be a little bit better, but she's also a smaller guard, so it's harder to score at the rim, and she's not a super, super great 3-point shooter. So that's when you're looking and you're okay. A big reason that South Carolina was able to beat Texas but not Oklahoma is the fact that Aaliyah Chavez could shoot that 3. Rory Harmon couldn't. If Aubrey Galvin is able to knock down a few 3s in this game, it changes what South Carolina has to do defensively. So that's another thing that we have to look at and be okay, if those perimeter players and Passat can make 3s and stretch out that defense and make them guard every possession, make Tanai Latson guard every possession, make Joyce Edwards guard every possession, make Tessa Johnson guard every possession, make Okot come out, step out, and guard every possession, it makes the game it pushes the advantage to Vanderbilt, in my opinion. In terms of who do I think is going to win, this going into Thursday, before the Oklahoma game, I would have said South Carolina. Now, most people would say, okay, South Carolina lost, they're going to bounce back, which that is my first thought. It's like, okay, they'll bounce back, like they're going to come back with a vengeance. But maybe this isn't the same South Carolina team of years of the past, and I'm not saying that they still can't win a national championship or they're not still an elite team or a top 5 team in the country, because they probably still are. But I will say this is not the same team that we've seen in years past. This is not an Asia Wilson or Leah Boston or Camila Cardoso-led team. There are flaws, and every team has flaws. There are flaws with this team, and I don't know if their strengths outweigh their flaws in these kinds of games. Granted, I do think them being at home helps them a lot. I think Vanderbilt, the keys that they need to focus on, if they're able to do those, I think they can win this game. If I have to choose, it's a winner. I've been back and forth on this all day, and I was gonna record this before my game today, didn't do it. Went, coach, came back, and I still don't know who I have winning this game. I could say a winner now and then change it tomorrow before the game. I'm gonna give South Carolina the benefit of the doubt. But honestly, I don't know, that Michigan win from Vanderbilt on the road, well, I'll say on the road, on a neutral site, tells me a lot about them, honestly. They beat LSU. LSU has proven to be a great team still. Even though they had lost to Vanderbilt and Kentucky, they came back and beat Texas, and then South Carolina beat Texas. So I think I'm going to go with Vanderbilt in this game. I think I'm going to give Vanderbilt the credit that they deserve. They're 20-0 right now. They've played, some really good teams. So I'm going to give them the credit that they deserve, and I'm going to go with Vanderbilt to win this game. But I think it's going to be a really close game. It's going to be a tough game for them to win in South Carolina, in Columbia. But I think I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to Vanderbilt. And I'm looking at Mikayla Blakes. Mikayla Blakes, this game will say a lot about what the National Player of the Year conversation will look like. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Thank you guys for watching.